Hi guys, and welcome back to Money Honeys. I wanted to start off today just by saying a huge thank you to everybody who's been watching. I hit today 50 subscribers, which is crazy. I know compared to some people's channels that doesn't seem like a lot, but this is something that has been very personal to me starting this channel. I haven't told any family or any friends about it. Nobody really in my personal life knows. My partner knows about it, but I haven't told him like where to find my channel, so I know he's not actually one of my subscribers. And I know I do a mix of money things and beauty reviews, so I'm sure that there are some people watching the channel who don't watch any of the Money Honey stuff, and some of the people watching for the budgeting Money Honeys things who don't watch any of the beauty. But either way, it is amazing to me that something I am doing just because I want to get information out there, and because I really love filming and editing these videos, actually has people watching it. So if you are watching, please give me a thumbs up or leave a comment. It lets me know that you're watching. And if you have not subscribed yet but would like to join the people who have, you can click subscribe down below. That's a little bit that I just wanted to say at the beginning of this because it makes me very personally happy, but more so thankful, because it's just awesome to me. Like, I can't believe it. So I thought I would start with that before we got into the actual money discussion today, and it's going to be a little bit of a quick one. I was trying to think of information that perhaps I hadn't mentioned in the last video about the 1 month emergency fund. And there are some more things about emergency funds and how to know, you know, what size to set it and everything when you get to your larger final emergency fund. But I think we covered a lot of the basics for getting those 1 month of emergency fund expenses saved up. So there are a few things that I thought I would mention. In last week's video, we talked about how you can tell it is actually an emergency in order to use your emergency fund. And we talked a lot about whether it's actually unexpected. So there are things that are truly unexpected, like job loss or a person who perhaps passes away in your family that you need to travel to see them, either when they're in poor health or perhaps for a funeral. There's sickness that you can have yourself that causes you to miss work for a while. Those are truly unexpected things. And other things that aren't unexpected, they're just bad planning. Like, we are now in December, and if I had not planned for Christmas, that's not really an emergency. You should not use your emergency fund for that. If things are the result of bad planning, really try to squeeze your budget, try to figure out a way to make those things happen without using your emergency fund, and definitely without using any credit cards or debt. The other thing you want to ask yourself, because sometimes things are unexpected, but do you really have to use the emergency fund? So let's say that something happens to my car, and I know that the fix for it is going to cost me $600, and I just don't have $600 that I can squeeze out of this month's budget. That may make me go to my emergency fund, but it could be that if I know that I can save $250 this month, and next month I can scratch together $350, and I can take transit in the meantime, or carpool, or walk to where I'm going, and I don't need to use my car, then try to do that. Like, anything you can do where you can keep that emergency fund and stretch everything you can out of your budget, that's what you're going to want to do. Another example of that is if you find that you are off work for a week because you're not feeling well, really look at where you can cut back to bare bones in your budget to squeak through without having to go to that emergency fund, because you really want it to be something that is untouchable except for those real emergencies. So if I knew I could only live on 3/4 of the budget that I would usually have, I would cut out all entertainment. I would not be going to any restaurants at all. I would be cutting out any kind of like wine or alcohol, of course. I say that because I like to buy a few bottles of wine during the month to have. I would really shop my pantry to see how much I could cut back on my grocery budget, because if I had to, with the soup and pasta and things in my freezer and stuff in my cupboard, I could probably go, 2 weeks or so without going grocery shopping. It maybe wouldn't be the healthiest 2 weeks and not the most enjoyable 2 weeks, but I'm sure I could do it. So that's really what you want to look at, is How much is this something that you weren't expecting, and how much can you squeeze out of your budget before you have to go to that emergency fund? The other thing I want to say is don't use an emergency as an excuse to buy more than you need to. So let's talk about cars. I keep coming back to this one, but say that you have, you know, your car breaks down one month and you have to scrape together $500 to find a way to fix it. And then 2 months later, it goes again, and it's gonna cost you like $1,000 to fix it. If that's what you have to do, spend that $1,000. Don't go, this car is costing me more money and I am just going to buy a new one and finance it. No, don't use emergencies as an excuse to buy any more than you need to. A lot of people use my car is breaking down all the time as an excuse to go and buy a brand new one. You need to really think about what the best value for money is. And I know that things are frustrating, but if you are in a place where you're trying to save up money or you're trying to pay down debt and you're working your way through these steps, don't let something throw you from the plan. If you weren't planning on buying a new car, don't buy one just because you're getting frustrated and upset with the one that you have. It kind of sucks, but put the money in to fix it to get you through until you get to a point where you can plan on buying your next car. The next thing I want to speak about is where you keep your emergency fund. Savings accounts don't get a lot of interest. I get that. But you want to keep that money somewhere where it is easily available. You'll hear a lot of times people say like, well, can't I put my emergency fund into, here in Canada we have GICs, Guaranteed Investment Certificates, I think they're called, but basically it's a investment where you get a bit more percentage interest from it, but you sort of lock it in for a certain amount of time. Or people might think, can't I put it into certain investments or things like that? The problem is that you want it to be available to you when you need it. If something is truly an emergency, those things I said, like having to fly across the country to go to a family member's funeral, or getting something fixed on your car because it went and you have to use that to get to work, you don't want to have to figure out how to sell the investment that you have to get at that money. And then you're kind of a little wary about taking the money because then you're going to lose out on the investment that you have. You don't want to be asking yourself those kinds of questions. You want to be able to get to that money in an emergency when you need it. And that means forgoing a bit of interest, but that's okay. Always keep your emergency fund in something where you can just transfer the money out as soon as you need it for a true emergency. The last thing I'm going to speak about is a little bit of an advanced emergency fund maneuver. And I'm just going to put this out there, but this is something you probably only want to do or even consider, and you may not care about doing this at all, but only something you want to consider when you really have your budget down, when you are not spending anything that is outside of your budget. I very rarely have to actually look at the balance in my checking account because I know that I'm not overspending on any of the categories that I have set up. I know how much money I have coming in, I know how much I have going out, so I will check every once in a while and balance to make sure that things work out, but I'm not checking and making sure that I, how much money I have in the bank, because I always know that I'm okay. And what I'm talking about here is you may want to consider, once you have saved up, excuse me, once you have saved up that 1 month of emergency expenses in a savings account, you can either leave it in that savings account, or just for that 1 month of expenses, maybe you want to think about having that in your checking account as a buffer. And let me tell you a little bit about that, because this is what I do. I like to keep that money in there, so it's like I always have a month worth of my expenses in my checking account, and when I get my paychecks, it sort of adds on to that, and then I spend it down through the month, but there's always that buffer there, so I never have to worry about going down past zero or into overdraft or anything like that, because it's kind of like there's a month of money in there, and then I'm always just sort of playing in the month beyond that, if that makes any sense. The other thing, the other reason that I do that is because of bank fees. So my bank will not charge you any fees at all if you keep a minimum amount of money in your checking account, and it's either $1,500 or $2,000, I think $1,500. So because I keep my minimum expenses, that month worth of emergency expenses in my checking account, it always keeps me above that minimum fee level so that I'm never paying bank fees on my checking account. And the reality is that you get so little interest right now in savings accounts that the money that I save from not paying fees is more money that I get to keep in my pocket than the interest I would get on that money in a savings account. It is something to consider. I would still suggest that you open up a savings account and keep that as where you put your 1 month of emergency expenses into, just because you can actually see it add up and hit your target there. You don't have to worry about it mixing in with your day-to-day expenses, but it is something that you might want to consider when you get your finances under control and you feel very comfortable with your money, that it is sometimes nice to have that buffer there in your checking account. I will say though, if your bank is anything like mine, checking accounts get 0 interest. So if it already bothers you that you're not getting very much interest in a savings account, you are really not going to like getting no interest in a checking account. But I am just telling you what it is that I do. I think that's everything I have to say for now. I know that this blog or this Money Honeys video is a little bit all over the place. It's been a long weekend. It's getting into that holiday time of year when it seems like there is so much to do and so many places to be and so many things on the go that I'm feeling a little frazzled today. And I have in mind, before I sit down and film these videos, either I sort of plan out what I'm going to talk about, or I have a good idea in mind of what I want to talk about. And I have to admit that today is one of the second one of those, because I knew what I wanted to tell you about before I sat down, but if I seem a little rambly, it's just because things have been a little crazy lately. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've not subscribed, once again, I encourage you to do so. Thank you so much for watching this. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comments, or if you have any comments you want to make at all, leave them down below. I promise you that next week will be a little bit more structured. We are going to move on to the next Money Honeys achievement and start talking about what you do after you have your 1 month of emergency expenses saved. So I look forward to filming that and sharing it with you next week. And for now, have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.